Okay, here's a little review of converting fractions to decimals, decimals to fractions, percents to decimals, percent to fractions, all that good stuff. So we'll kind of try to hit it all a little bit here. So first of all, if you want to convert a percent back to a fraction, the definition of a percent is out of 100. So you're going to put it over 100, and then you might have to simplify it. So for example, I might be like, oh, 4 go into both of those and get 3 out of 25. Okay, and then these are relatively prime. They don't have anything in common. If you want to convert a percent to a decimal, you move the decimal. So the decimal's at the end of the number right now. So you move it 2 jumps to the left. So that would be 0.12, because this is 12 hundredths and this is 12 hundredths. So again, the decimal would be 2 to the left to make it a decimal, and again 2 to the right to make it a percent, and then a fraction you put it over 100. 25%, yes, you can put it over 100, but you should not need to. You should know that that is like a fourth of a dollar is a quarter. You should just know that, a fourth. And same thing as a decimal. Again, 25% is a quarter. Probably should not have to move the decimal, but 2 jumps would be this. But again, think of a quarter. I don't know why I just wrote that, but okay. Probably because of above. But, you know 25% is a fourth, and you also know it's like a quarter, like 25 cents, okay? This one you should have memorized. This is a third. It doesn't, we'll talk about how to deal with repeating and decimals later, but right now that's just a good one to have memorized. 48%, I would put it over 100 because that's the definition of percent. And, maybe divide both of them by 4, see what that does. Was this at 12 over 25? Looks like they're relatively prime, so I'm good. And then 60%, put 60 over 100. Again, I could divide by 10, or I could just cancel the zeros. 6/10, and then 3/5. And again, a lot of you probably should have that memorized, that 6 out of 10 is 60%, then you could just reduce that. Again, if I want to convert this to a decimal, twice, and twice. So this is like 0.333 repeating, this is 0.48, and this is 0.6. The other thing is, if you have a decimal percent, so say you have like 12.5% and they want it as a fraction, you would put 12.5 out of 100. And again, if you had this memorized, it would make life easier. I'm going to scale it up by 10, both to get rid of that decimal point, because again, decimals and fractions really don't mix. And then I would probably divide them both by 25. Think of a quarter, $1.25. 25 goes in there, what? 5 times, and 25 goes in there, what would that be, 40? And then I'm like, oh, I can divide by 5 again, so I must not have picked the best number there. And I get 1/8. And again, if you have an eighth memorized, that's super handy. Again, if I give you a decimal, you would just move it the other way. So 2 jumps to the right, 1, 2, this would be 15%. 2 jumps to the right, this would be 125%. 2 jumps to the right, 0.5%, and then 2 jumps to the right, 81%, okay? Same thing over here. If you have a percent that's over 100, so say you have 150%, you would still put it over 100. I could cancel the zeros and then simplify. So I'm going to divide those both by 5, which is 3/2, which if you know 100% is all of it, plus half, it's 150, so it's all plus a half. You might know that that's 1.5 or 3/2, just kind of on your own. All right, let's look at these. So say I give you a fraction and I want you to go to the different forms. Again, a lot of these you should just have memorized. So like on my list here, actually, I pretty much think you should have them all memorized. So we'll do a few where you don't, but like 3/4, you should know that's 75 cents. Like 3/4 of a dollar is 75 cents. Again, multiply by 100 or move the decimal twice. The reason you move it twice is you're multiplying by 100. So that would be 75%. 7/10, again, you should know because you say it the same way it looks. It's 7/10, so 7/10. And then again, 2 jumps because you're putting it out of 100. Or you can just, like this is 75 in the hundreds position. This is 7, like if I put a 0, 70 over 100. But again, most of us think of multiplying it and then 70%. 2/5, some of you might be like, oh, I don't have it memorized. Well, get it out of 10. 10 is a super friendly number, so like 4/10 And then hopefully you should be able to multiply by 10 and get 40%, or you should know that 4/10 is 40%. A fourth of $1, again, is 25%. Let's see, an eighth would be half of it. So if you know a fourth is 25, an eighth is just half of that, $12.50 or 12.5%. 3/8, if you're like, I don't know what a 3/8 is. Well, it's these two combined. Are you guys okay that 2/8 is the same as a fourth? 1/8 is 12.5. So if you add these guys together, you're going to get 3/8 because 2/8 and 1/8. So that's 37.5%. A third, you should just know, is 33.3 repeating. And again, 2/3 is 2 sets of this. So you should know that's 66.6 repeating. Nines actually give you your repeatings, and we'll talk about that later. So like 1/9 is 0.1 repeating. So as a percent, if you move the decimal 2 jumps, it's 11.1%. 2/9 is 0.2 repeating. So again, 0.22222. So if you multiply by 100, 22.2 repeating percent. So if I see nines, I know it's repeating. So I know that's 77.7 repeating percent. Okay. Now, what if you get something you don't know, right? Like say you honestly have no idea what, I have no idea either. Say I give you, well, say 7/8. Say you don't know 7/8, right? And I mean, I could build 7/8 because I know it's 6/8 and 1/8. And I know that 6/8 is 3/4. So that's what, 70.75 or 75%. Yeah, Julie. And I know 1/8 is half of a fourth. So a fourth is 25%. So I know that that would be what? 1/8 would be what? 12.5%. So as a decimal, that would be 0.125 or plus 12.5%. And so I could add those to get what? 87.5%, or I could add these to get the decimal, 0.875. But how about if you don't know that and you're stuck? You can always do long division. So no calculator. Top number goes in the little house thing. 8 goes out here, and you just have to do long division. So you put a decimal with a 0, bring your decimal straight up, and you're like, okay, 8 doesn't go into 7. 8 goes in there, and you're like, oh, let's see. 8 times 9 is too big. 8 times 8 sounds good. And then you subtract, and you bring down a 0. And then you're like, okay, 8 goes into 60. Well, 8 times 8 is too big, 64. But, oh, maybe 8 times 7. And 8 times 7 is 56. You have your 4. And then you bring down your 0, and you get 40, which is nice because 8 goes into 40 perfectly, which is 5. And you subtract the 40, and you get 0, which means this is a terminating decimal. So if you can't do it mentally, you're going to have to do long division. So 7/8 is the same as 0.875 in decimal form or 87.5 in percent form. Because 8 doesn't scale nicely with 100. I can't really do it very nicely. Now, if you do long division and you get a repeating decimal, then it doesn't terminate, and then you have to deal with that. So for example, like 2/3, say you don't have that memorized, you'd put the 2 in the house, 3 out here. And again, you're stuck doing long division. So the top number goes underneath. This is what you're dividing by. Put your decimal straight up. 3 doesn't go into 2. 3 goes into 20 6 times. So you remember you put your 6 above that place value. You get 18. And I'm going to subtract. And again, 3 goes in there, and you're like, oh, 6 again. And you're like, subtract, and you get 18. And again, you bring down a 2. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to go on forever. And you are right. It is going to go on forever. So you don't keep doing it because it is a waste of your time. So at this point, you know that the fraction 2/3 is the same as 0.6 repeating. And if I multiply by 100, that's 66.6 repeating percent. So if it's something you can't do mentally, then you're going to have to do long division. So hopefully that helps. If not, let me know, and I can make another video and help you out. Take care.